Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, a company valuation expert in St. Louis, Missouri. During this episode, we will discuss bankruptcy questions with Stephen White, who is actually an ESOP valuation expert and bankruptcy expert in Northern New Jersey. Welcome, Stephen.
Hello, and I'm excited about being here today.
Yeah, so it's not a real glamorous topic. This is kind of something serious for business owners. But why do you believe bankruptcy has such a stigma attached to the term?
Yeah, the first thing, you're right. This is not one of those types of topics where everybody jumps up and down and is excited about it. And the reason could be because of that mere fact that it's called bankruptcy. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing glamorous about bankruptcy. But there's different phases of bankruptcy. It doesn't always mean that your company is in dire straits and is a severely distressed company. It could be because your company's products have become a little obsolete, or the technology has passed you by. Doesn't always tie into poor management, and it's essentially where I was going with that. Because there's a number of different things that could have taken place in order to put your company in that distressed manner. Where bankruptcy captures that terminology of being a bad thing is because most associated with I have to sell my business, I have to sell everything that's a part of my business. And most business owners, they probably borrowed and collateralized their homes and other types of personal properties that's associated with their business. And if they have to liquidate to pay off debt, their homes and all those other personal things, they are all tied into that overall process. So if you think about it, of course, you think bankruptcy, it's a bad thing. But there's also other areas of bankruptcy that could be beneficial to a business owner that is an alternative to liquidating everything and selling it out as a fire sale, so to speak.
Well, and I think that business owners always take something like this to heart. They take it personal. Like I failed or I did something wrong, which in reality right now with the economy, with everything, there are just certain types, like you said, certain types of products or things that may not be as profitable right now.
Right.
And so you have to make some decisions if you have a bunch of overhead. But this is not the only type of bankruptcy that you deal with. So what types of bankruptcy do you typically encounter in your profession?
Right. So we only deal with corporate bankruptcy. And as everyone knows, there's personal bankruptcy as well. We don't get involved in the personal bankruptcy, but I will say, which is pretty interesting, depending on the structure of your company, if you're an LLC, obviously everything falls right back to you, the owner. So when you are filing for bankruptcy, you are filing against yourself. So we do have conversations in that instance of trying to walk through the overall process with business owners that are structured as an LLC. There's different language, there's different structures. I mean, not structures, but there's a different plan that's put in place for that type of bankruptcy, but that comes our way. We also have Chapter 7, where we mentioned to you before that you have to liquidate a lot of your overall business. And then there's Chapter 11 that comes our way for larger businesses that have some challenges, or distressed companies as well, but they have a different mindset as far as what they want to do. So we get a plethora of different things that kind of come our way. We have a great team of attorneys that we do work with that we can refer our clients to start that overall consultation process. We still feel as though we're a very central and integral part of that overall bankruptcy process as a valuator, as pertaining to your overall business. But those are the things that really come across our plate, and we get a chance to really just sit down and have a conversation with business owners and understand, first of all, what's going on, then understand how do we get to this particular point. And then the third part of it is, okay, let's strategize now and figure out how we can get out of this. And that's where understanding the different types of bankruptcies come into play, because then you get a chance to move them into that the area that fits them best, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of it's not really a right or wrong. It's a choice. Right. What choice is going to fit with the business current situation that you're in? But you talked a little bit about a couple types of business bankruptcies. So can you just tell us more about what is the difference between Chapter 11 bankruptcy and Chapter 7 bankruptcy?
Sure. Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I'll start there. Chapter 7 bankruptcy for a
keep it easy for us. We don't know.
Chapter 7. I will honestly say that's the chapter that if you have a desire to want to continue operating a business, that's not Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is you are so far in debt and that there is no way for you to grow out of that overall business. So you have to therefore set up everything for a forced liquidation. And we've probably all seen these signs. You have the banners out, we're going out of business, fire sale, everything must go. Those are 9 times out of 10, those are businesses that have filed for Chapter 7. Yeah. And the problem with that is that everything that you have, everything that you built your business on, the products that you actually have that you've already paid for, of course, you've created so much debt now. You don't have a say-so as far as how that process works. The trustee who's assigned to that through the bankruptcy court, excuse me, they automatically just put it out for sale. And they go through that process of selling. And whatever they receive back, and after they pay the administrative costs and legal associate and your attorney's fees, whatever's remaining then goes to the creditors. And then hopefully, you've been able to pay off everything at that point in time. Sometimes that's not necessarily the case. But everything goes. And as I mentioned to you before, if you collateral your home and things of that nature, that falls into play as well. And some people have lost their homes because they've over leveraged themselves. They created too much debt for their overall business. The other side, which is Chapter 11, and there are other chapters that involve, but these are two of the more primary corporate business bankruptcies that we come across. Chapter 11 is a little different. Chapter 11 is one of those types of situations you can do this. You can breathe. Okay. Because what happens now is that you file a petition for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and it's approved. There's 3 different phases that you can go through. You still may be in a process where you have a lot of debt, where you have to liquidate, but it's not a forced liquidation. This is more of an orderly liquidation. So that means then that whatever you're selling, you can sell it not at a deep discount, but at what maybe at a fair market value. And in addition to that, once you go through that process, and you don't have to sell it immediately, it takes time to give the Chapter 11 allows you time to sell those particular products. Another thing in that overall process is that not only are you selling those things, you're selling at a higher value. You may actually have an opportunity to renegotiate with your creditors, where you can reduce the amount that you actually owe them. And sometimes it may even drop it down significantly because you had an opportunity to negotiate that process with them. And then, of course, the other side of it, the third part of this, is the reorganization part. The reorganization part is, again, it's a breathing part where you can sit down, structure a plan on how you can actually get out of this. If you know that the business is not so far removed as to being in a Chapter 7, but you're not so far removed where you can structure your business and create a plan where you can get out of this, pay off your creditors, and have this business continue to flourish. And the beautiful thing about this is that depending on where you are, your location, there are a number of businesses that are out there right now that you go in, you shop in, you're buying their products, but they are under Chapter 11 as well. But no one ever knows. That's the great thing about Chapter 11. Like I said in the very beginning, bankruptcy is not a great thing, but it doesn't mean doom and gloom either. You do have an opportunity to restructure yourself, and that's the big difference between a Chapter 11 and a Chapter 7.
Well, and it seems like, you may be in a business where there's certain lines of work that maybe need to go away. And that's part of the reorganization process. But
right. So you can go through a realignment. So we have a situation right now that we are working on. We're sitting with the entire management team. We put up, we have a big whiteboard that we diagram out the company, and we look at every part of the overall company. And when we sit down with the management team, we go through each one of those business lines, and we have a better understanding of those business lines. So we go through a cash flow test for each one, not just for the company itself. We break down each individual. So therefore we can understand, okay, company or division X has some serious challenges here. And we identify what all those challenges are. And then we begin to realize, okay, if we got rid of division X, where does that put the company? How does that look if we just remove it completely? We just sell this off, take some of the proceeds from that division that we're selling, or just sell that division completely, because you could restructure it. We could sell it to a competitor who is in that particular market. They could have this. So you could provide some type of plan where you can transition that particular product, whereas not necessarily just selling the individual products. You can sell that whole division. And that is something that we're working on right now with a third party to come in and buy that particular division. That probably will be the grace and savior for that particular company if we can get that transaction done. If not, there's other things that we can do as well. But that's the beauty of the reorganization side of it. You have to be very transparent. Business owners actually have to say, you know what, I'm gonna become more vulnerable. I'm gonna open myself up, and I'm gonna tell you everything that's going on and why we got to this particular point. Even though these are things that you built up from scratch, you're running some challenges right now. Sometimes you're gonna have to, tear that Band-Aid off and let your oldest child go,
Right?
And let them go and save the others, because right now they can go on and go off into doing something other than what they're doing under your own umbrella.
And I think we see it a lot with business owners, even just doing traditional valuation work, where they kind of understand the 30,000-foot view, but they might not understand that one line of work is actually very, very under profitable, if you will. So not profitable, I should speak correctly. But so you have one line of work that is actually losing a ton of money. Yes. And then you have another line of work that is highly profitable, but because they're looking at the whole picture together, they just kind of think that they're marginally profitable. When in reality, if we pull that one kind of bad line of work out, you could actually be way more successful as a business.
Right.
But sometimes they can't see all of that, right?
No, they can. And just to go back to this same company again, this is a division, just to give a little bit more color on, it's one of their earlier product lines that they established with a particular company. And it's kind of basically gotten them from the early stages to where they are as a mature company. It's done extremely well. However, innovation has surpassed them. And so the other types of product lines are a lot more efficient than what they currently have. It still looks good. It's still a very good product, but they need enhancements done to it. And the company can't afford to do those kinds of things. So it is kind of hard for the business owner. What I was alluding to is that this is the one that you had that started everything. So sometimes business owners get so attached to a particular area, and it's draining. This division is literally draining the profit line of that over a company, but they have a blind eye because this is what started everything, and I don't want to let it go. I rather look at other divisions which are doing fine, but they're just not as large as the first division that they actually have. So that's the reason why we were restructuring, saying that if we get rid of this, the others will be able to flourish and do extremely well.
Well, and I think that that's a really good example, because I think you have a lot of businesses that are in that space where they've created a lot of different things over time, and you just have to cut some dead weight at some point and kind of move on. But let's talk about this reorganization process a little bit. During this process, are the business owners safe from creditors during this time? Is there like a window, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what happens under Chapter 11? Once a business owner comes to that realization that they need to file for a petition, there's a couple of things that they should do before they get to that point. But let's just say they're already comfortable. They decided that they're going to file a petition. Once they file that petition, there's something that's called an automatic stay. Within that automatic stay, and this is under Chapter 11, once they file that automatic stay, everything is put on hold. And what I mean by put on hold, all of your creditors, they're all placed on hold. So regardless of whatever your debt is, your closer repossession of any particular of equipment, your products, your real estate, their foreclosing over your real estate, everything is placed on hold. So your creditors now are going to be provided with a documentation from the court stating that this company has filed for Chapter 11. There's an automatic stay, and there's a period that you have to hold off on asking for reclaiming of your debt. So during that overall process of the automatic stay, now it's not there permanently. It's designed, and it goes back to what I was sharing before. When you file for Chapter 11, you get a chance to breathe. Well, the automatic stay gives you that chance to breathe. But here's the thing, and here's where a lot of businesses fall on their faces. Because they get that little opportunity to breathe, they feel like they can just redo all of this on their own. And that's where they get into their own problems. You have to have a team assembled in order to help you. You have to have financial professionals that understand from a legal standpoint, from an accounting standpoint, from a financial standpoint, working all together to help this business come out of this reorganization profitable and will be able to sustain in the future. So they are protected from their creditors for a period of time. And the courts are going to want to make certain that there's a ton of reports that you have to fill out to make sure that you're abiding by all the things that you should be doing. And that's where professionals come in and they play a significant role. It's not that they take everything off of your plate. You're still rolling up your sleeves. You're still working with them. But you have somebody who designed in those particular roles that are coming in and design something for you to help you continue to operate your business. So therefore, they can tell you whether or not or when you'll be able to start paying back creditors, or those individuals will be able to tell you, okay, we need to start thinking about liquidating your assets in order to do this. It gives you a chance to think. And that's what's most important about the automatic stay.
Well, and another question we have, it has to do with like kind of your role. So I think we traditionally hear about like turnaround specialists or turnaround experts or restructuring experts, but as a business valuator, and you may also serve that purpose, but what is your role in the bankruptcy process having to do with valuations or having to do with this restructuring?
Yeah, so let me address the turnaround specialist. I think that's a fantastic role. It's not a role that we play here. Okay. But the reason why I mention that is because it makes me go back to thinking why I wanted to do bankruptcy valuation in the first place, and more so focusing on Chapter 11. We do have a lot of valuations that come in, opportunities that come our way pertaining to bankruptcy, but I love the Chapter 11 because I feel as though we now have that opportunity to help a business survive. And if you think about the number of businesses that are small and mid-sized in our country, we have tons of them. And yes, some of them are mismanaged, but also at the exact same time, some of them have just run into a bad opportunity. So what our role is, we come in, and not saying that we're acting as the savior of those companies, but we are sitting down with them to give them an understanding of the value of their current business. And it's one of the things that I share with clients all the time. And this is a personal bias. I strongly believe that valuation is the beginning and the end of everything. So you begin with your valuation to understand where you currently are. And as we go through this overall process, we'll do another valuation just to make sure that we reached our goal, that what we wanted to obtain. There is no other profession that is able to do that for you other than someone that's evaluated and has an expertise in that particular area, in that particular industry, and your particular field. So what we do is we sit down and we kind of identify about 4 different things that I think that will be beneficial to a business owner. And the first thing is just understanding, okay, you made that petition for, or you're considering making that petition for a Chapter 11. You need to understand a couple of things. One, first thing is liquidation versus reorganization. And so the reorganization plan, when you file, the courts are going to ask you to put together a plan, whether or not it be from a liquidation standpoint or a reorganization. you still need to have a value of your overall business. You need to have a value of everything that you actually have in your business, your line of business, or the individual businesses that make up the whole business. We'll walk you through that overall process and conduct the valuation there. The liquidation value, as I mentioned earlier, it could just give you a breathing room or set a period of time where we can sell parts of the business either at fair market value, establish an opportunity to find a partner on a third party to acquire part of the overall business. And then the restructuring valuation, that's the beauty of what we are really focusing our attention on, is identifying different things about your business that we can find that you have some inefficiencies and that we can enhance the value of your overall business utilizing those KPIs. So it's very similar to what we would do for any other type of business that may not be going through bankruptcy, but they want to take their business from point A to point B. And we know they can do this because they're business owners. They started their own business, but we can help them get there much faster by working together. So that's a reorganization of value. The third part is the what's called a cash flow test. So the cash flow test is something that we run, and every evaluator should run this when they do or are involved in a bankruptcy. But the cash flow test is really towards the end. The cash flow test is a process that was designed to show the cash flow of showing that this company is going to be able to continue to operate and continue to be what's termed in our industry a going concern. They're able to operate. They're going to continue to generate income, and it'll identify the different areas where they'll be able to generate this income. And then the last part, we'll talk about more of the fresh start. And that's the joy that you get out of where I sit, is having that conversation of saying, okay, we've identified whether or not we're going to liquidate portions of the business or a division of the business. We've identified how we're going to restructure what we're going to remain in the overall business. The cash flow test identifies how we're going to pay off all of our debts and also continue to operate. And then the fresh start accounting, we start from scratch. This is a new beginning. Same name, or we can rename the company to a different form. We have a company, and the reason why I hesitate because we have a company that we're going through that process as far as the fresh start accounting. It's a new beginning for that overall business. So that's the reason why I said there's a lot of differences between the types of bankruptcies. This personal bankruptcies, this Chapter 7 bankruptcies, this Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but this part of it for a reorganization where we come in and where we're involved, this all takes place in the very beginning. So we get a chance to sit down with the management team and truly have them become vulnerable and share as much information as possible. So because we're there to help them, we want them to continue to grow this business. We want them to get back to where they were when they first started this business, having that passion for this particular business. Just because you ran into some tough times doesn't mean that is always going to be that way. And that's what our role is. And it's a role that continues not just at the beginning of the bankruptcy period or the middle, it can continue on afterwards as well.
Well, and I think that that's sometimes hard for the business person to understand, is that they need to get that fresh perspective. They need to get kind of third-party strategic planning group, and it could involve a business valuation person, these turnaround specialists, but it's creating a new plan so that they can really be successful in the future. And working with them to change, which we all have hard time doing, but to change what they have been doing in the past that may not have been successful, and how do you focus on doing some things different from a cash perspective? Run your business however you want, but we come in to look at the cash. What's your cash flow? What's your risk? What are things happening? Another question we have about Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It appears, as we've been talking about this, it appears that it's a process that may be suited for larger companies. And I don't know what larger means. We might have to quantify that. But, for smaller and mid-sized businesses, maybe under $1 million in revenue, is Chapter 11 still a viable option? Or does it matter the size of business, really?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a few things that goes into play with Chapter 11. And I'm a big believer of, I like to lay everything on the table and make sure everyone is very clear as far as how this process works. Chapter 11 is a great tool to use for businesses that want to restructure or go through a reorganization. Understand, it is a very expensive process, and it's time consuming. There's a lot of time that goes into this. You may not see the type of business that you once were years ago for some time, for a couple of years. It is a long process. And because it is a long process, it can be very expensive. And there's certain things that go into this that you have to meet on those orders that come from the courts, that you have to hit each one of those dates and times and submitting the paperwork in, making sure you file things appropriately and on a timely manner. So when we had that conversation about going through that reorganization process, it is still your business, but it's not your business over this restructuring period. Someone's coming in and telling you, we need to do certain things at certain periods of times. And we need you to sit down and see, this is the reason why we need to get rid of this, or this is the reason why you need to restructure your management team, for lack of a better phrase. Maybe you need to move someone out of this role.
And hopefully not the business owner, but sometimes maybe it's true.
So those are hard conversations. Those are some very big things that need to take place. So I'm pulling into, does this suit every company? Yeah. Maybe not so much. Because if you think about it, some of the smaller or mid-sized companies may not have as large of a management team, may not have all the different layers of the overall business. And for them to file for Chapter 11, they're already in debt. And now you want to add or incur another cost on top of it, because if you think about it, the legal side of it, they're going to want a hefty retainer up front, because you're going through bankruptcy right now. So you're going to have to find a ways to pay off your creditors. Well, they want to get paid first. So that's another expense. But there's an alternative to this. And if you go back to 2019, towards the middle of the year, towards the end of the year, Congress actually came up with something as an amendment to Chapter 11. It's called Subchapter 5. And that's really designed for those companies that do not have the enormous debt that like a Kmart or Neiman Marcus has. Maybe you're a mid-sized company that has debt that ranges anywhere between $2 to $3 million. Well, this is something that's better suited for them. And in fact, since we're going through our era with the pandemic right now, with the stimulus package that just recently came out, they increased it from 2.7 up to $7.5 million in debt. So that's opened up a window for businesses to participate in this. And the difference between the two is less expensive. It's a little quicker than a Chapter 11. But here's the thing. The courts basically dictate how things are done. So as a creditor, you don't really have any say-so in this. You can petition all you want, but under this, you have more protection as a business owner under Title V. So you can it's still Chapter 11, but because of the amount of debt that you have, that's really where the criteria comes in. The amount of debt that needs to be restructured is going to determine whether or not you fall under the chapter under 5, or if you have to go through the straight Chapter 11. And then the other thing is, just to keep in mind, having that initial conversation is always better for a business owner, to have a clear understanding. Okay, which direction do I go into? Sometimes it's even better that you actually just have a conversation with your creditors before you even get into this overall process. Maybe you have some creditors that will actually say, all right, let's work out an arrangement. So therefore, you don't have to go through that bankruptcy process. So there's other alternatives that they could actually go into, but is determining whether or not Chapter 11 is better for you depends on the amount of debt that you actually have. And because of that debt, you may be in a situation where it works out better for you because you do have people that are watching and protecting over you.
So that kind of leads us into our next question, which I think we kind of covered, but we may just want to highlight. So advising small and mid-sized business owners to file for Chapter 11, there could be other alternatives, which I think you kind of just discussed. So I don't know if there's a little bit, just the highlights, because I think that this is something that business owners have not heard about and they don't understand. But just tell us more about this. You said Chapter 5.
Right. So it's nothing new. I mean, well, it is relatively new. It was back in 2019. It seems like it's been a long time ago.
Right.
2019. So I know that there have been some conversation that, okay, Congress just created this to help out the small and mid-sized businesses, when in fact, giving them credit because of the mere fact they had the foresight to know everyone can't fall into Chapter 11. Everyone can't pay those fees that are associated with Chapter 11. So Chapter 5, so we have companies that have certain amount of debt. Right now we have one that, and it works out for them in this way because they have amassed really anywhere between 3.5 to 4 million in debt. Prior to the stimulus package that recently just came out, they didn't fall into that particular area. And so when the pandemic hit, we were having conversations as far as what's going to happen with this business. And I'm going to share this because the pandemic has caused a number of businesses to start considering bankruptcy because they're not going to be able to survive this particular area. We've had numerous phone calls from businesses that we just haven't had before, wanting to sit down and have conversations about what steps can we take. But this particular company, the one that had the 3.5 to 4 million in debt, they were already having some struggles towards the end of 2019. And the conversations that we had pertaining to the amount of debt that they actually have, giving them options and choices, and speaking with their legal representation on the bankruptcy side, they just didn't fall into this. But then when the pandemic hit, they put it on pause. They were trying to figure out what was going to be the best strategy for them. Pandemic hit, they restructured how the Subchapter 5 would work, and they increased the amount of debt that you could have, the ceiling, up to 7.5. Now, what you can do is go through that overall process, just as if you were a larger company, but you go through that larger process, but there's no U.S. trustee. So the trustee is the person that designates and sets up the committees and the teams and so forth. And then that's another cost that's associated with it as well. Now it's just a bankruptcy judge. So the bankruptcy judge then determines, they take a look at your company. You still should go through that process of evaluating. You have to understand the valuation of your orbit. You still need someone to walk you through that overall process, but it's a reduced amount of cost that's associated with this. And the judge then deems, okay, this is what we're going to charge, assess for the business, and this is how you're going to be able to pay back your creditors, the senior creditors. The junior creditors, they end up in a different bucket because if you remember, everything works in order. The senior creditors are always going to get paid first. So as we go through Subchapter 5, which makes it a lot cleaner and a smoother transition, the courts make that decision, and they make it very quickly as far as how this overall process goes. It doesn't linger. It doesn't go through. You still have a number of different files that you still need to submit into the courts. But again, it gives you more breathing room. You still have that automatic stay to reorganize your company, but the judges make the decisions for you very quickly.
Okay. So I think that is really helpful because it gives people some options, if you will. Yeah. So, and you kind of touched on it a little bit with stimulus package and things like that, but we have a lot of companies that have filed or received the payroll protection plan, the PPP loans.
Yeah.
So if a company was considering filing for bankruptcy before this or during this, do these PPP loans or idle loans, does this save the company? Like, are they just done? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. And this is going to be debated for quite some time, whether or not the stimulus package really help and save a lot of these businesses. From our conversations that we're having, it's a great resource for them to have. But let's take a step back and think about it for a moment. It's based off of your overall revenue. If a business has been shut down for 3.5 months and they haven't generated any revenue at all, and they were already having some trouble before the pandemic hit, this is not really going to be a savior for them. If your business was thriving and was doing well before the pandemic and it shut down, that's amount of revenue you're not going to be able to recoup that 3-month period. This payroll protection is a benefit for your employees, having them back and keeping the business operating to get your products out to those that need it. That could be one that could be a Band-Aid to help, but there's going to be a lot of internal reorganization. The way that businesses operate are going to look a lot different. They may not be in the phase of bankruptcy, but they have to start rethinking how they are running their overall business, because the way that we ran it just 6 months ago, those days are gone, and I'm not sure we're ever going back to those particular ways. So you have to be creative, and technology is going to be a huge part of that overall process. So does it help the overall business? It can, but depending on where you were in the stage before the pandemic actually hit will really be the final determination of whether or not it was helpful or not.
Well, and I think that part of it, part of the PPP loans or the EIDL loans was to make sure you could keep your people,
Right.
And you could continue to pay them and give you some space to maybe think. The problem is did everybody just get so panicked, that we were more stressed on the unknown, that we didn't really take time to say, okay, let's go internal. Let's figure out what we're doing wrong. We have this kind of time frame. And I don't know, I think some businesses have done that very well. And they've said, okay, we need to pivot. We need to change. We need to do something different. What do we do? And then other businesses have kind of been like, the sky is falling, just running around. Like, I don't know what to do, so it depends. I think it was a good attempt. It just doesn't know. I don't know if it's really going to prevent somebody from filing for bankruptcy.
Right.
That's going to be the hard part.
Because every industry is different.
Correct.
Not every business was affected as much as others have been. So it's going to be an interesting dialogue for the next several months to see how all of this pans out. And then you go back, you take a look at those companies that did receive PPP. How did that help? Did it really have a significant impact on you coming out of this? And then also knowing where they were to help the company before the pandemic hit. So there will be a lot of academic studies on this over the next several years.
So one of our ending questions, a good question is, so I think in the business owner's mind, when a business goes through the bankruptcy process, either Chapter 11 or 7, does that mean that they could never own another business? Like if this one wasn't successful, its time was over, could they start something else, or is that going to prevent them? Yeah. Is it going to be like a scarlet letter type of thing that they can't do anything else?
Right. Well, bankruptcy is a part of your credit. Just look at it that way. So whenever there's certain things that negatively affect your credit, is going to be there for a period of time. Bankruptcy is one of those things. But here's the beautiful thing, or the outcome of this. As I mentioned to you, you have that fresh start accounting. Once you get your business up and running and getting back to business where they're profitable again, it doesn't mean that you can't go out and buy another company, because now what this shows is that you were able to restructure a failing company and getting that company back up and running again. There are other institutions who will take a look at that and say, okay, you took a bad situation, you turned it into something really good. We don't have a problem with working with you from a lending perspective to see another organization which you can actually grow and have it prosper. Does that always work for every company? No, but I don't want anyone to ever think just because you filed for bankruptcy is over and you have to find another line of work. There is opportunities after bankruptcy as well. Well,
and I think that's, an interesting part of what we do in doing business valuations is I think that we give business owners a pulse. Where are you today?
Right.
where could, because there's a lot of times, I know that you do this, is that we'll talk to business owners and they'll say, oh, if I grew revenues by this or that, then I'm going to make, and I go and sell my company, I'm going to make millions. And it's like, well, if you do those things, you're going to be at this level. And I think that we introduce kind of a reality check
Right.
from what the business is worth. And it's sometimes, it seems, would be very helpful in this situation where you work with the business owner and say, okay, here you are today. If you do these things, you could be there tomorrow, but also you're not going to be at close to bankruptcy and then worth $100 million within the next year. Like, it's a process. But is that part of what your services involve? Is these business valuations, even maybe pre-bankruptcy thoughts for business owners?
We do. And that goes back to what I was saying. I think a lot of times where a lot of businesses miss the boat is not being informed to know that you should probably sit down with someone and have a conversation before you leap into that bankruptcy conversation. Just understanding where you are right now. Maybe it is something that you've thought about. Maybe it is something that you read. Well, you need to seek counsel from someone that can help you understand currently where you are. And that's what we do. We try to emphasize that. We do public speaking in different organizations. And bankruptcy is not one that they like to talk about during the cocktail hour.
Right.
They're thinking about it. So every now and then we try to poke the obvious or talk about the elephant in the room, so to speak, and just sharing. If there's ever any time that you want to have a conversation about your overall business that may not be doing as well as you would have liked without using the words bankruptcy, oftentimes we get that conversation, we'll get a call, and then we'll sit down and have a consultation with them and walk through that overall process and just giving them, look, here's some of your options here. Bankruptcy may not necessarily be where you have to go, but if you do have to go down that road, let's walk through and show you what it would look like.
Sure. Well, and I think for our listeners, can you just tell us more about you and your firm and kind of the opportunities that you have? You're based in the East Coast.
Right.
So, but tell us more about the name of your firm and all the wonderful things you do.
Yeah, thank you. So Onyx Partners Group is an independent business valuation advisory firm. Actually, last week we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, which is a big number for a number of businesses when they started off, of course. But here's the reality of what we do is really focusing on understanding and helping businesses. We provide valuation work for a variety of different reasons. I specialize in a couple of different areas. I'm fortunate enough to have a team of individuals that work in different areas, but we cover purchase and acquisitions of valuations. We'll establish buy-sell agreements for business owners. We also work in the gift and estate tax valuation, of course, bankruptcy. And there are certain institutions that we work with as far as SBA financing. So we are a generalist, but we specialize in certain areas for each one of us on our particular teams. So we actually have great dialogues with our clients. We try to be that type of valuation firm that is not going to give you a cookie cutter type of report. We sit down and we walk through the entire consultation process. So that way, maybe, and then there are a few times that has happened, you don't really need a valuation. What you need is something else before you actually get to that valuation part of it. And I find that people are a little bit more relieved when you're not there just telling them, this is what you have to do without listening to them. Understand exactly where they currently are and how they actually got to this point, but also walking in their vision of where they want to take this business, because valuation is more than just a conclusion of value. It's about helping them obtain that particular goal there where they want to go. So if you think about it, I do specialize in ESOP. They want to exit out of the business. Well, every business is not established or set up right now to exit the business. So how do you get to that point? Well, that's where the valuation comes in. The valuation of walking you through identifying different key performance indicators to help you get to that particular point. So we like to consider ourselves that type of valuation company that will actually hold your hand and walk you through that overall process. And sometimes we stick around a little too long with our customers because they want us to walk them through the valuation, because this is a living, breathing document. We'll sit down with them, go on a quarterly basis just to talk about those projections that we put together for them. So they're not just fluff numbers. Yeah, we can do this and this. Well, is it realistic? Is it sustainable? Is it something that this company can truly embrace? Can the management team embrace on this? So we do more than just the valuation work. We try to incorporate the consulting side of it as well.
Yeah, and from my experience with working with you and talking to you, you also have a specialty in ESOPs, or employee stock ownership program.
That's correct.
So, and I think we'll probably save that topic for another conversation. But your depth and width of knowledge and understanding of how businesses are run is very important to this process. And so I think that is, something to highlight, that it's not just about the business valuation. It's about how you really take a unique view at each company and figure out the right process for them at the current stage of their development. And that's more important than just saying, oh, you get chapter 11, you get chapter 7. It's really more of a management consulting type of situation where you're going in and let's find the next right step that I think is helpful. So we're going to list every way that somebody could reach you. Email, calling you. I've been telling a lot of business owners during this time period to reach out to experts and ask them questions, because we're still somewhat sheltering in home. We're working in the office sporadically, but I still feel we have time to answer people's questions. And so I encourage every one of our listener, if you have a bankruptcy question, even if it was in the back of your mind, right? You're just like, I'm getting a little nervous. Things are piling up. I don't know what to do. It might be a good first step to reach out to somebody who knows the bankruptcy side, but also knows how to grow the business. And I think that you offer kind of both perspectives.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.